everyone, and welcome inside of the Rogers studio for the season finale of Attack Wrap, joined by Mark McKelvie and John Morris. I think this is the first time that all three of us have been on the Attack Wrap stage together, so it's great having you guys here as well. Obviously, a lot to discuss. We're going to do a year-end wrap-up, basically. So we're going to talk about the playoffs, maybe the rosters, and what to expect for next season, and how things possibly could or could not look. Also, we do have an autographed Owen Sound Attack jersey to my left that you have a chance to win. All you need to do is call in. Feel free to ask one of us some questions, get your name in that draw, and at the end of the show, we will draw a name, and the winner will get this autographed jersey. Unfortunately, Dale DeGray didn't sign it last week after the show. He had to scoot out quick, but it's signed by every other member of the Owen Sound Attack. So guys, I guess we'll jump right into things, the fact of recapping this playoff run. This was a playoff that I thought that coming into the season, the majority of Owen Sound fans knew that their team could get into the playoffs, but didn't think it was going to be that good.
I think that's safe to say. I think coming into the season, we all predicted that the Attack were probably going to be about middle of the pack. And when it came into this season, you looked at their roster and you thought it's a pretty decent team. But to go on the run that they had in the regular season to set a franchise record, obviously really impressive. And just because of that alone and the fact that they had over 100 points, the expectations were big going into the playoffs, much bigger than they would have been going into the playoffs if we had started them in September. And I think while it didn't end the way people hoped, you go out in 6 games, you went out in 6 games in the conference final. And I think there's nothing to hang their head at with the run that the Owen Sound Attack had in the playoffs, because I'd say it was a special run, no doubt about that, and very encouraging because, as we'll see later on in the show, there's a lot of players that'll be back next year. The experiences they got this year will certainly help them going forward.
Yeah, and you almost wish we could go back to what we had for our preseason standings and what they would have looked like. And we do have them somewhere, but I think most of us had the Attack in maybe battling for a home playoff spot, maybe just in the 5 or 6 seed, but not quite getting into that home playoff seed. So the fact that they did that and a whole heck of a lot more was something I definitely didn't expect at the beginning of the year.
And now this brings up a whole new conversation in the sense that you go from last season into this season coming up, and now expectations are basically as high as they can possibly be for this Owen Sound Attack team with 2 more years of all these experienced guys.
Yeah, they got a lot of players back, and there's no doubt that we all look at that roster and think, boy, there's big things ahead for them. Although I would really encourage Attack fans maybe to just maybe put the expectations not as high as you probably think they should be, because you see it all the time in sports. There's a lot of teams that perform at a level that was way above where it was expected, and then the next season there's that little bit of a setback. I'm not saying there's going to be a setback, but I'm not saying maybe they're going to be a 100-point team. That's not to say, though, that they're not a team that's going to get well in the 90s, a team that's going to get home ice in the playoffs. I would expect that they'll certainly do that again next season. At the same time, though, a franchise record year, those don't happen all the time. So you got to kind of put a little halt on the expectations, but at the same time, I think everyone should be really optimistic going forward.
Yeah, and the one example that comes to my head right away is you look at the Calgary Flames 3 years ago. They make it in the playoffs, get through the first round, and you're thinking, oh, this team's really got it going and is going to do good going into next season. Next season, they don't make the playoffs. Is that going to be the case for the Owen Sound Attack? Not likely in the OHL when there's only 2 teams in the Western Conference that aren't going to make the playoffs, but is 3rd realistic for the Owen Sound Attack? Again, yes. Is 2nd if the other division wins? Yes. It's not for sure they're going to get first. They're going to have a really good roster, but is some big pieces that aren't going to be here from this year.
Well, we do have a caller on the line. We have Kyle with us today. Kyle, how are you tonight?
Good. How are you?
Good. And do you have any questions for either myself or these other 2 gentlemen? Kyle, are you still there?
No, I don't really have a question.
No? Okay. Were there any comments that you had maybe about the season?
It was a good season.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought it was very good.
I'd say it was a great season, to be honest.
Absolutely.
I think Kyle just wants to get in on the draw here to win the jersey tonight.
For sure.
Kyle, maybe your favorite part of the season, your favorite moment, if you have one.
I'm making the playoff.
That does it for me.
Yeah,
That's perfect. All right, well, thank you very much for calling, Kyle. Your name will be entered into the draw for the autographed Owen Sound Attack jersey, and you'll hear your name at the end of the show. Once again, thanks for calling in, and stay on the line so we can get your info. So, guys, let's go and recap this playoff run. So the Owen Sound Attack finished the regular season with 102 points, actually 1 point back to the Erie Otters. There was a chance, especially in that last 5 games, where I actually thought they could potentially catch the Erie Otters for that first spot. But they end up playing the Kitchener Rangers and take them in 5.
Yeah, and that's a series that overall the Kitchener Rangers were overmatched by the Owen Sound Attack. And the Attack, that exclamation point they put on the start of the playoffs in game number 1 when I won 9-1 was just a game that, if you weren't already excited after that game as an Attack fan, you were through the roof pumped for what could lie here in the spring. But as we end up seeing, the Attack then the next night lost to the Kitchener Rangers. So that maybe sort of brought people back down. But after that, the Attack took care of business. And the Rangers were banged up. They were missing some pieces. There's no doubt about that. But at the same time, if you're the Owen Sound Attack, you had to take care of business. And I thought that's exactly what they did. And I thought that a lot of players who were really trying to get some good playoff experience under their belt, that series really helped them going forward.
Can you imagine that series if we had opening day rosters for both teams? What it would have looked like? Because I think it would have been a lot different. I mean, you think of the pieces that the Rangers got rid of, the Attack had a few, but you know, that's a series that maybe could have been a 7-gamer if there were the opening day rosters from the regular season.
For sure. So we're going to get back to that in a moment, guys. We do have another caller. Calls are flying in. We have Holly on the line with us. Holly, how are you tonight?
Good, how are you?
Good. Do you have any questions for us? Any comments about the season?
I do have something to say about this season, though. Like, this season was actually a lot better than the last 2 seasons. And I've noticed that they did improve, especially Michael, especially with them getting their 2 winning streaks. And the one thing I can say about Michael is, yes, he is the #1 goalie, but the one thing I could say that he could improve on is, instead of coming out so far from the net, stay closer to the net to keep out more pucks out. And another thing with the is when certain players get penalties or the other team starts to win, they kind of give up. But other than that, they do really well.
Well, I can touch on that really quickly before we go to break. Appreciate the comments, Holly. I think with Michael McNiven, there was a lot of nights that the Owen Sound Attack limited how much work he had to do. And sometimes as a netminder, you get bored and you want to be involved. And the other thing is Michael has really good puck handling abilities. So it's just natural for him to want to come out of the net and play the puck. But I can understand your concerns there. At the same time, I thought this team, they showed a lot of grit all season long and a lot of heart and determination.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much for calling in, Holly. Your name will be entered into the draw as well. Stay with us, everybody, because we have a lot more to cover here on Attack Wrap inside of the Rogers studio. Welcome back, everybody, inside of the Rogers studio. Alongside with me, John Morris and Mark McKelvie, both of these gentlemen coming from the press box down into the Rogers studio, down on my level a little bit now because you guys were up so high all season long. We do have Elaine on the line with us. Elaine, how are you tonight?
I'm pretty good.
And
I really enjoy watching our team. And I was just wondering about Michael McNiven. Is he going to be playing for the Canadians or for us next season?
Yeah, it's the one thing we'd all really like to have the true answer on, and I don't think we're going to get it until we get much closer to the start of the 2017-2018 season. Talking to Dale DeGray last week with Matt on Attack Wrap, he didn't rule out the possibility that he's not going to be back. I believe Montreal's AHL team's moving.
Yes, they're moving to Laval.
To Laval. He could be there. They have an ECHL team in Brampton, and I think for the Canadians, their most important thing is they want Michael McNiven starting games somewhere so his development can continue, and maybe that's something that can't happen in the OHL after being the OHL goaltender of the year, but we don't know, and it'd be really nice to know, but we have to wait and see.
Yeah, he's going to be somewhere. It's going to probably be in the minors with the Canadians organization or here in Owen Sound. That's the best answer we can give you. He'll be somewhere.
yeah.
Yes. Well, he did well for us.
Absolutely, he did. Do you have any other questions or comments?
No, the season went well. I enjoyed it all.
Well, I think it's safe to say us, from a broadcasting standpoint, certainly enjoyed it as well. So we thank you very much, Elaine, for calling, and your name will be entered into the draw for the autographed jersey. And maybe that's a little bit of a quick approach that we can touch on a little bit later on with goalies and whatnot. But guys, let's quickly touch on the Sioux round. So Owen Sound comes off of taking the Kitchener Rangers in 5 games, and then they get off to a little bit of a rough start, losing the first 2 to the Greyhounds.
Well, you could say that maybe it wasn't fair that the team that had more points didn't have home ice advantage in that series, but it's the way that the OHL playoff format works, and they had to go to the Sioux for the first 2 games. And from talking to the players, from talking to Ryan McGill, they all said that the team just didn't play their game in those first 2 games. They dropped those 2 to the Sioux, and you wonder how much that did for maybe the mindset of the Sioux Greyhounds. Did they come into Owen Sound maybe a little overconfident? I don't really think they did, but Owen Sound really got back to their game plan and then was able to rip off 4 wins in a row. And the one thing you got to remember in that series is, you might say 4 wins in a row, it's pretty dominant, but that one win in game number 5 back in the Sioux, that was quite a win for the Owen Sound Attack, because that was a game where it was a tight battle and the Attack were able to get a goal late. They were able to kind of work their way ahead, but that was a battle. That was probably the toughest game of the series. That maybe aside from game number 6, but getting that win in the Sioux, to me, that was maybe probably the biggest win of the playoffs.
Yeah, and 3-4-1 hockey games over the first, or 3-4-1 games over the first 3 games of the series. 2 in the Sioux for the Sioux, and then Owen Sound holds serve at home. And they had 4 chances to get that 1 win on the road they needed, and they finally did it in their 3rd opportunity.
And quickly, guys, obviously we know how the 3rd round went, and unfortunately Attack fans and us, probably we would have liked it to continue on, but a heck of a season for the Owen Sound Attack, and it's against the Erie Otters. I thought they put up a great fight.
Oh, it was a fantastic series, really, although the Owen Sound Attack will probably say, and the coaching staff and members of the team, that, again, maybe they just didn't play their full game, and overall, the Erie Otters are a team that, unless you bring your A game, you're not going to beat them. The Attack, the thing that I liked seeing was how resilient they were after losing game number 1, bouncing back, winning game 2 in Erie. And that's something that John just mentioned. You had to win 1 in your opponent's arena, and that's what the Attack did in game number 2. Matt Schmall's the OT winner. That was a pretty thrilling night for an Attack fans, because that was a fantastic hockey game. And then things didn't end the way they would have liked, especially going to game number 6. You lose Santino Centorami back in the first period to a very questionable slew footing penalty, and from there, the train just kind of went off the tracks in game number 6. It's not the way you would have liked to have seen the season end, but at the same time, that cannot be your lasting memory of this season, was how game 6 went, because that's a one-off to me.
Yeah, and the 6-1 loss in game 1 or not, in my opinion, I still think Owen Sound played better in game 1 against Erie than they played in game 1 or 2 in the Sioux, because I didn't think they played very well, and that was the message from the players and the coaching staff as well. But through the first period, I didn't think they were that bad in Erie. They just couldn't get a break, and Erie's quick attack, and all of a sudden you're down 2-3-4, and the game's out of reach in a hurry.
Yeah. Before we jump into forwards, guys, we do have another caller on the line. They're flying in, and that's great to hear, because more people have the chance to win this autographed jersey. We have Leanne on the line with us. Leanne, how are you tonight?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Do you have any questions or comments for us?
I do. I have 2 questions, but
Okay.
I'll start with one. I was wondering what your opinion was if they do go through, if the league goes through with the top 8 by points to make it into the playoffs. What your opinion was on that?
Well, if there was going to be a change to the playoff format, I would think that you need to just, at the end of the regular season, forget about the conferences and just reseed the teams based on how they did in the regular season. I'd be all for it, because as we saw this year, the Western Conference was just so loaded and was clearly well above the Eastern Conference. You could say that the Mississauga Steelheads and Peterborough Petes, they were good teams. At the same time, though, I don't think they were in the top 5 in the league this year. So I'd be all for it if they wanted to change the playoff format, because you want to see the very best teams going head-to-head. And look, the Owen Sound Attack and Erie Otters went 6 games in the Western Conference final. Yeah. Erie and Mississauga went 5 in the final. So you could probably ask yourself, what was the true OHL Championship Series?
Erie and London went 7.
Yeah, absolutely.
London and Windsor went 7 in the first round. I'm not that much for it. I'd like to see them put some other things into place that's going to rebalance out the East and the West, maybe in the draft, and as far as being able to bring players in for some markets compared to others. And when Erie wins the championship, I want them to have to beat the Sting in the first round wasn't the toughest matchup, have to beat London in the second round, have to beat Owen Sound in the third round, and then see who they get out of the East. Because when we look back on it in 5 years, I want to look back at the road they took to the championship, and I want to be thrilled by the good teams they had to beat to get there and prove that they're the champions, and they definitely did it this year running through the Western Conference.
And what's your second question, Leanne?
Okay. So, in your opinion, then, which is the best developing of quality players, the QMJHL, the OHL, or the WHL?
Good question.
Well, again, that's I think they're all probably even. I don't think one is better than the other because it basically depends on where you were born and what part of the country you live in. All around the CHL is clearly the top junior hockey organization and association in all of junior hockey across the world. So I don't think it really matters. I think, though, if you choose the OHL route, if you're a player who is just recently drafted and you're trying to decide which route to go, all you got to do is look at the track record of the OHL and the players they've developed. And at the same time, I think you can ask any Owen Sound Attack fan what a treat it is to watch players develop in this league. And I know we're going to talk about it in a second, but I'm really excited about some of the young players we saw this year because I know that from watching them, they've got a really high potential and that they can potentially get to that next level. And I think this is the best learning ground for them.
And for me, it's maybe not so much leagues individually as it is teams and members of those teams individually. You look at the Otters coaching staff and led by Chris Knobloch, and you look at their D-core, a couple 8th-round picks, a 14th-round pick, and a couple 5th-round picks, and yet they had the overager and the defenseman of the year out of the 5th round 4 or 5 years ago now, and one of the top D-cores in the league, even though none of them were really highly touted picks.
Yeah, I guess it's the right place at the right time for some of these young players, and certainly I thought this year, especially for the Attack, you see the young up-and-coming rookies, and it's exciting to see how they're slowly forming into playing not only Owen Sound hockey, but they're slowly turning into having their own playing style there, and I think that this was a nice place for them to be able to develop that.
Absolutely, no doubt about that.
Well, thank you very much for calling, Leanne. We appreciate it. Your name is going to be entered into the draw for the Attack jersey behind me. While we go, did you have any more questions for us or any more comments, Leanne?
I'm just a huge Attack fan, and I think they did awesome, and you guys are doing a great job, too. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Have a great day.
You as well. Thank you, Leanne.
Bye.
So let's jump right into the forwards, guys. You talk about the forwards of this Attack team, and there's so many different names you can bring out, but let's talk with that top line. Nick Suzuki, Jonah Gadjevich, Kevin Hancock.
What a top line it is, and arguably was the best line in the OHL during the second half of the season, and the point production speaks for itself, and the amount of games that those guys were able to contribute in. Obviously, there was a lot of wins in the second half of the year, and they were a really big part of that. And coming into the year, we talked about so many times throughout the season, expectations were really high for Nick Suzuki. He had a 20-goal season in his rookie campaign, and he follows it up this year with 96 points. I don't think any of us thought Nick Suzuki would have put up 96 points. That's not a knock on him. I think we all thought he'd have really good production, but a 96 points from a draft-eligible player, that doesn't happen all the time. To see his development all season long was really incredible, and just to see him how he's been climbing the draft rankings as well has been a lot of fun to track, and you're getting to see so much of why he is going to be a first-round pick in the upcoming NHL entry draft. I could watch those bank shots all day, but Nick Suzuki, I thought he was kind of the glue to that line in a sense, and usually you talk about the glue guy kind of being the guy who gets in there and crashes and bangs and creates space. But the thing is, Nick's got such a high skill level that I think he really complements Kevin Hancock, because Hancock, again, another player who we knew he had a lot of skill, just maybe need that opportunity for it to open up. And Jonah Gadjevich, just think about how many times he knew to get to the front of the net and that Nick Suzuki would get the puck there. So at the same time, that top line was a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, and you see Nick Suzuki's stats there, 96 points, plus 51. Second smartest player voted by the coaches and finished 10th in the NHL Central scouting rankings. But you look at all his highlights there, and he's not just scoring goals against bad teams in this league. He had a 5-point night back in his hometown against London at the Bud, and was obviously the first star of the game as the Owen Sound Attack beat the London Knights that night. And he can snipe, he can set guys up. The behind the back pass to Jonah Gadjevich, I don't know if you remember that one late in the season. And his hockey IQ is through the roof.
Yeah, and just to wrap up before we move on, Jonah Gadjevich, there's a player that if you're a young player in this league and you want to look at somebody as a bit of a role model, I'd say Jonah Gadjevich is the perfect player, because this was his 3rd season in Owen Sound, and none of us coming into this season had him pegged to be a 40-goal scorer. Again, not a knock on him, but he just took his game to another level, and it's the work he did in the offseason to improve his skating, to improve his quickness, that needs to be recognized. And at the same time, hockey is all about getting pucks on net. This might sound cliche, but here's a player who shoots from every angle, and he was rewarded.
Yeah, and we've always called him the man-child. We've always known how strong he was, but to see his skating come this far in one off season was pretty incredible. And you go through all of his goals. This is the behind-the-back pass I was talking about, but Jonah never missed them. He seemed to score them all the time. And then you get to the other guy, Kevin Hancock, maybe one of the best, most responsible defensive forwards in the league. As you see, Jonah's stats are 74 points, very impressive year. And Kevin was a guy, 28 points last season in his first full season, and finally just took off. And a couple big shootout goals against Tyler Parsons that got him some extra points going towards the end of the season. And another guy that you never thought was going to do it, but here he is, toe drag, 5-hole. Just something that he put in his repertoire this year.
And, we keep mentioning that we didn't expect this from these guys, but I think that speaks a lot to just the opportunity they were given by Ryan McGill and the opportunity to grow and develop. They all took full advantage of it.
And you talk about chemistry with these three, and I think that they are the epitome of just that. The way that they could find each other on the ice at the right times and the right opportunities was flawless, in my opinion, especially with those three playing together. They had such a good bond. Before we go on, guys, I want to also let you know, remember Jonah Gadjevich, what was it, 4 hat tricks he had this year, all after January 1st, so very fitting for him to be able to have that good of a season. Now, let's move down the list. We'll go to the second line. Unfortunately, Petrus Palmu, attack leading scorer, won't be there this season, but he deserves to be able to extend his hockey career.
No doubt about that, and obviously he wants to take the next step and go on to the pro route, and he's going to have that opportunity in Finland, but that doesn't say that the North American door has been closed, because I know Petrus is still getting a lot of talk when it comes to the NHL entry draft. Whether he's picked or not, we'll have to wait and see, but it's not very often that teams will let a 98-point player just pass by. Petrus, what a fantastic season he had all year long. Seemed to score a lot of big goals, and when I talk about big goals, they might not have been late in the game or the type of goals that win you hockey games. They were the ones that get you back in hockey games, or the ones that put you ahead early that he scored. And a lot of the time we saw it on the power play with just that great wrister that he could pick the corners with. A great season for Petrus. He wants to move on to the next level. It's understandable. 3 years here in Owen Sound for him, and he's the all-time leading scorer by a European-born player in franchise history, and he's going to be well remembered in these parts for a very long time.
Absolutely.
I know that fans are going to miss seeing him play in the Bayshore, but we can point out it'd be a long shot, but if he ever was drafted to the NHL and an NHL franchise, his organization said, hey, maybe you can go back to the OHL for one more year, he would be an overager, he would be taking up an import spot, but never say never, I guess you could say, but probably unlikely.
Yeah, and Dale said he would be more than happy to sign an import and an overage card to Petrus Palmu. But for me, looking at Petrus, and I don't want to be on the negative side of things, but signing with HCTPS in the Finnish Elite League and having Saku Koivu as my head coach going into next season, I think is something that Petrus Palmu is probably pretty excited about going into the next year, and that maybe was one of the arguments that made him not be able to say no to whatever the offer was.
So you look at guys like Cordell James and Ethan Zapula. Ethan Zapula had, I thought, a very good season in his own right, and then Cordell James coming over, he fit right into the attack lineup perfectly. He will be moving on as well, being an overager. As we go down the list, let's talk a little bit about the third line there, guys, and I thought that each line on this attack squad had their own role to play, and they fit it perfectly.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that when you go through this roster. A player who jumps out to me is Chase Campbell, who was acquired in early December and then proceeded to have probably the greatest start to a tenure with the team that any junior hockey player has ever had, because the attack went on their amazing win streak. And for Chase Campbell, here's a player that bought in. And that's all you want to see, especially when you're acquiring a player. You're bringing him in because you want him to play a certain way, to fit a certain role. And Chase Campbell, I thought, despite the fact that the team was winning a lot, had a bit of a slow start because I think, he needed to adjust. He needed to get familiar with his surroundings and his teammates. And then after pretty much the trade deadline, wow. This guy's game just completely took off, and it's the blocking shots, it's the finishing hits that he's not the biggest guy out there, but did he ever buy into that gritty role, and it was a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, and I mean, you want to look back at maybe your favorite Chase Campbell moment. What was better than watching him go back to Ottawa? I believe he scored 2 goals that game and had the jersey pulled and the point to the crowd after the second one, which was an absolute snipe short side under the bar on Lafreniere. I believe it was Olivier Lafreniere in net. And a guy who came over, I think he had a game winner in his 3rd game here. His first goal at the Bayshore was a game winner in a close hockey game. And talk about buying in. No one else came into this team this year and bought in as well as he did.
Yeah, he was certainly an important piece for them to be able to pick up. Matt Schmalz, he's going to be moving on as well. Congratulations to him in the season that he had here. Big role, big chances for Matt Schmalz, and may or may not be my attack playoff pick, but we'll discuss that later on in the show. And then you get into the final line too. We'll talk about that before we go to break, or after the break. But we encourage you, everybody, please call in, get your name into the draw for this attack jersey that's autographed by all the players, and you have something special to wear to the games next season. But we want to thank you and keep joining us here inside the studio. Welcome back inside of the Rogers studio here. Mark McKelvie and John Morris sitting with me. Before we jump into the last line of the forwards and defensemen, we have Mark on the line with us. Mark, how are you tonight?
Good. How you doing, buddy?
Good. Do you have any questions for us?
My question is, how do you guys know exactly what you're going to post as for like anything for, I don't know, for like what you're scheduling?
Do you mean like maybe on Twitter or?
Yeah, like a bit on Twitter and such.
I actually think that's a great question, something that we're able to clearly answer. I think, Mark, you were the most active on Twitter this year.
How do I know I'm going to post? Usually it's just kind of a feeling I get. I mean, you're posting information that you want people to know, things that could be valuable. Obviously, Twitter is such a great resource and such a great tool for people to see exactly what's going on. We just do our best to keep everybody up to date, especially about what's going on, not only with the team, but around the league. Same time here, we want to let you know when you can catch games, when you can see attack wrap, who's going to be the guests. Basically, we just want to keep everybody up to date as much as we can, because we know that you're all fans as well, and that you don't want to miss anything. We live in a society now, what do they call it, FOMO, fear of missing out.
Yep.
You know what? People don't want to miss things, so we want to make sure we get you the information you need.
Of course.
And Mark will get you all the information, and me and Matt are a little more erratic.
Yeah.
I don't know why that is. It's just it's a hard routine to get into, and the guys who in the league who are in that routine, you got to give them credit, because to tweet after every period about who scored, which one of the seasons it was, what the score is, this, that, it's a lot to keep up with.
Yep, no
It
doubt.
certainly is.
Did you have anything else for us, Mark?
No, that's it.
No? Well, thank you very much for joining us here inside of the studio and answering or throwing out that question for us. It's nice for us as broadcasters to kind of be able to shed our light on some of these personal questions.
And good luck in the draw. We'll see who wins this jersey. There's lots of names going in there.
All right, thanks a lot, Mark.
All right.
So now let's move into the last line of forwards, guys. Somebody that jumps out to me already is the season that Aiden Dudas had, and especially in the playoffs too. I thought he was a big piece for this attack team.
Remember what I said about don't let that final game of the playoffs be your lasting memory for the season? Well, you can kind of let that be the lasting memory for Aiden Dudas.
Yeah.
Double standard.
He scored in that game number 6, got the attack out to that early 1-0 lead in that game that they had to win. He scored 2 goals in game number 5. Aiden Dudas was kind of what you normally see with a 16-year-old, and that's playing in pretty much a minor role and being given the opportunity to develop and to let his game grow. Whereas the year before with Nick Suzuki, I mean, he was put into pretty much a first-line role by the end of the year.
Yeah.
He was being counted upon, and some players will succeed in that role, some won't. I think the development road that Aiden Dudas is on, as we saw in the playoffs, paid off, because I think he was given a chance just to learn his game. And again, another member of this team, you're excited to see what he'll do in his second campaign.
Yeah, and 21 points in his rookie season, not bad at all. Maybe a guy that's the one knock on him is going to be his size. He's not the biggest guy, but as Ryan McGill has said lots of time, he's a very headsy player, meaning he's like Nick Suzuki, has a very high hockey IQ, and he puts a couple pounds on over the summer, comes back with the same mentality and confidence level he had at the end of the season. And who knows where his year ends up next year.
Yeah, another player I'd want to talk about, guys, is Maxim Sushko. And we were kind of talking about the third line. And obviously there was some juggling throughout the forwards as to what the lines were. But we didn't really talk about Maxim Sushko. And we mentioned that the Attack will have an opportunity to select in the import draft. Last year they took Sushko. And I thought he had a great season. You know, a lot of the times when a player comes to a new country, it can take a lot of time for them to adjust. And Maxim seemed to, right off the bat, kind of figure out the North American style of play. And what I like seeing was he wasn't afraid to go into the dirty areas. He wasn't afraid to throw the body around. He dished out a couple big hits, and I think he surprised a lot of opponents with just how strong he was. He missed a bit of time after taking a high hit back in November, and that probably slowed things down for him. But when we got to the playoffs, did Sushko ever figure things out once again and got right back on track? And we can call him the king of the dab, because that was his go-to celebration. And I love just seeing that, the confidence and the enthusiasm that he played with, because a lot of the time, you know, you can understand if he'd be shy coming to a new place, but he certainly wasn't, and gives you a lot of confidence going forward.
Yeah, and I mean, he's got a really nice stride. He's a really easy skater to watch, I find. He gets his up and down the ice really well, and season under his belt. Another guy that, you know, this was a breakout year for him in a way, but who knows how many points he could put up next year playing in a higher role.
And Maxim Sushko, a lot of people thought that you could see remnants of a little bit of Petrus Palmu's play in him. So you could look at it that way as well, that yes, Petrus Palmu's leaving, but Maxim Sushko definitely is going to be a big piece, I think, on this Attack team. But we do have a caller on the line. We have another Elaine with us. Elaine, how are you tonight?
Hi, I'm doing good. How are you guys?
Good, thank you. Elaine, do you have any questions or comments for us?
Well, my first comment, Gadget's first hat trick of the year was matched by my granddaughter's first hat trick ever. And she was so proud that she matched his, and she's only 6 years old. And well, I gotta say her name, Cameron Laycock.
Well.
And second, I thought Sean Dursey had a great season this year. And I just want your comments on that. Third, who do you think will be our captain next year? And my fourth comment is thank you to you three guys. It's been a transition in Rogers and the Owen Sound Attack announcers, and you guys have done a great job, so thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So I guess we'll answer the...
well, first of all, congrats on the hat trick. We'll throw that out there.
Yes, congratulations on the hat trick. I guess maybe we'll touch a little bit on Dursey, but he's somebody obviously we want to talk about in defenseman.
Yeah, pretty much I think Elaine might be our director, because that's where we were going next with the defense. So we'll talk about Sean Dursey in a moment, but let's answer the question about who we think the captain will be next year. We're getting put on the spot. I'll start first. I think it'll be Nick Suzuki. He wore an A in his second season. And Ryan McGill is the kind of coach that, and he was quoted recently in an article as saying that when they look at the team for leaders, they look by players that lead by example. And I think you don't have to look any further than Nick Suzuki. We saw it with Santino Santarami, probably not the most vocal guy, but always led by example. And I think that's why we'll see the C put on Nick Suzuki's jersey next season.
I'm going to take the 99 birth year route as well, but I'm going to go with Marcus Phillips. Maybe didn't wear an A this season. I can't remember off the top of my head now. We've been out of it for a couple weeks. But a guy who's always been a leader and a captain at every level. And some of the players he's been the captain of had quite good seasons last year. I think definitely a good choice.
I guess we wouldn't be surprised, though, if they went off the board and picked somebody else, because I don't think any of us had Santino Santarami as the player that was going to be the captain there last season. So it'll be interesting to see. It'll be just like there was transition here. There'll be a little bit of transition in the leadership group with the Owen Sound Attack.
Well, I'm actually going to go with John's answer. I had Marcus Phillips pegged for a while, even throughout the season. I think he's just not only a very mature young man, but I think that he has a good presence to be able to lead a hockey team. So I think that they're going to stick with the defensive core there. But hey, Nick Suzuki is also a no-doubter in my mind for that. We only have about 30 seconds before we go to break, so we'll touch on some defensemen when we get back from the break. We still want to encourage you, please call in. We've had a lot of callers so far. We encourage you to keep calling in. The chance to win this jersey, you'll have that in the last few minutes of the show to see who the winner is. But stay with us. More coming your way inside of the Rogers studio. Welcome back, everybody, inside of the Rogers studio. Alongside of me, Mark McKelvie and John Morris. Before we get into defensive core and goaltenders, we have Matt on the line. We had a Mark, and now we have a Matt. Matt, how are you tonight?
I'm good, thanks, guys. How are you guys doing?
Pretty good.
Doing well.
Do you have any comments or questions for us?
Well, first and foremost, I want to say awesome season on you guys. That was very entertaining to watch. I went to numerous games this year, both on TV and in person. It was awesome to watch. I actually have a question for the commentators. What would you guys like to see in next year's performances? Some more veteran players stick around, or some of the younger talent come up and forward with what they've been taught this year by Sensor Emmy and whatnot? It just seems like hopefully we don't lose. Do you think we'd lose McNiven next year if Carey Price carries on, or what are you guys' thoughts on that?
I think there's very good chance Michael McNiven won't be back next year, but at the same time, I'm really excited about the prospects of next season for the Owen Sound attack, because a lot of their top players, the players they counted on this year, can all be back next year, and you expect that they will be back. So I'm really excited about next year because the younger players, they are already contributing, which means that now they're going to be another year older, and they're going to be able to contribute probably at an even more regular pace.
That much more experience,
yeah,
for sure.
They'll definitely have more experience. And I think the big thing for this team next year is that they have to realize that I don't want to say the window is small for this team to have big success, but now's the time, I believe. So I think you talked about enjoying the games all season long. I think next season's going to be a lot of fun as well.
But they also didn't have high expectations this year as well, did they? And they kind of went over over the top on that one. So I thank you guys for your time and everything this year. It's been very nice to watch you guys on Rogers TV all along the season. My parents and everybody enjoys it as well. So it's been awesome.
Thanks for the support.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Matt. Appreciate it. So, guys, let's jump right into defensemen. And you know what? Let's start off with Sean Durzi, somebody who I thought was a great player that has stepped his game up, certainly from the year before to this year. And it wasn't even so much on the points aspect of it, John, but more or less just his overall play.
Yeah, I was a pretty big Sean Durzi fan in 2015-16 to the point where Manny used to tease me about how good I thought he was because he had 10 goals and 14 assists, I believe, but he was playing the wing for a defenseman, but I just thought he was so smart. And that translated pretty well into this year. Just 2 goals, I believe, but really started to rack up the assists after about 15 games. Slow start to the season after he was injured to start the season. But then he went on a stretch where he had about 30 points in 25 games or so from the back end. And the guy who can pinch in, can make plays, loves the fake shot, find a guy at the side of the net wide open with the pass, and a guy who could be drafted this year, and I'm expecting to have a big year next year.
A player that you would imagine will see some power play time next season.
Oh, boy, yeah.
Oh, for sure. And then we can look at Marcus Phillips, and obviously an up-and-coming young player, someone who we talked about could very well have an assistant captain role or a captain role next year. But his play, I feel, has certainly elevated, and it's interesting because you see the way that Santino played, and Marcus Phillips brings his own element to this defensive core too.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. And Marcus Phillips fell into a category of a player that came into the league with a lot of hype and came into the league and fit in just so well. Like, it was just such a natural fit. It almost felt like there wasn't really any growing pains in his first season for Marcus Phillips. So right away, scouts had him pegged as a first-round pick for the NHL entry draft. But he comes into his second year and maybe gets off to a bit of a slow start. That's probably fair to say. But I didn't think his game really took any steps back. And then next thing you know, everyone's saying, oh, maybe we had him overrated a little bit. But then you saw the Marcus Phillips that developed over the second half of the season and got back to that player that maybe, I don't think he ever took a step back, but now he took that step forward you thought you'd see at the start of his second year. And right away, I look at him as arguably a candidate for, before his time is done in this league, potentially to be OHL Defenseman of the Year. He's so steady, very smart player, obviously has a high hockey IQ and a tremendous skater. I'd like to see him rush the puck a little more, to be honest, because when he does rush the puck, he makes things happen. And I think back to a game in Hamilton earlier this year where he stole a puck at his own blue line and then wheeled up ice, burned one of the Bulldogs pretty good on a toe drag, and then walked in and ripped it past like a goaltender. Those are the kind of plays that just make you go, wow, this guy's got a lot of tools, and you want to see him use them all. Yeah, and I mean, a guy who you paid a lot of attention as soon as he entered the league, being a really high draft pick. And remember last year, one play against the Sioux, he got burned by Zach Senyshyn, and I talked about him later off camera and kind of laughed about him. I was like, I knew he was fast, but I didn't know he was that fast. And then watching him this year in the postseason against him, a couple one-on-ones, and he's stride for stride, backward skating, keeping Zach Senyshyn in check, one of the fastest players in the league. So he has got a lot better through his first two seasons.
Santino Santorami, obviously the captain, and as the season progressed, the glue that basically held this not only defensive core but this team together. And he broke a couple records, and he overall had a great year. I think he's going to be missed, John.
Yeah, maybe the one player that knew the system the best out of all the players and where the breakout needed to come from, if it was an up-the-middle breakout or an up-the-wall breakout, and he just seemed to be able to do it all. His neutral zone regroups to get the zone back and start tilting the ice in Owen Sound's favor was second to none on the back end for Owen Sound this year. And then there were the power play points that, and there was a lot of them, and you'll see some of them through this highlight pack, but regular season, probably their MVP, if not the guy standing beside him there.
Yeah, Santino Santorami did everything you would want to see from an overage defenseman and more. And really, he could have probably been the defenseman of the year and the overager of the year if it hadn't been for Darren Radish, because I think they were a 1-1A situation for top D-man in the league. He'll be missed because, again, like I said, leading by example is so huge, and there weren't many nights that I don't think there was any nights really that you after the game said, gee, would have liked to see a little more from Santorami. I thought he left it all on the ice, and I was disappointed that his final OHL game had to go down the way it did. I think that was a tough break for him, but certainly will be missed, and we wish him the best of luck in his future, and we'll see where his hockey career goes.
Well, now let's talk about his line mates and Jacob Friend, who's somebody who I think could have a big role to play in this season coming up for the Owen Sound Attack. Somebody who very well could wear the captain as well with his role of Owen Sound.
Yeah, Jacob Friend, I think, will be back as an overager. We have to remember he is drafted by the LA Kings, so the cards are kind of in their hands if they wanted to sign him and then potentially put him in, whether that be the AHL or the ECHL. But I think when push comes to shove, there is a good reason to bring Jacob Friend back to the OHL because, again, here's a player that wasn't drafted into this league. He was signed as a free agent. I don't want to say he's a year behind everyone, but he still has room to develop. A lot of the time, you don't send a player back for their OA year because their development is going to be had at the next level. They've kind of reached their peak. I don't think that's the case with Jacob Friend. We saw him contribute a bit offensively and his physical presence. If he's on this Owen Sound Attack team next year, you've got to realize that does so many wonders for the forwards this attack team has because it opens up some space for them. I think it's fair to say, though, that, and I think, John, you can probably touch on this, after he came back from his injury, I think Jacob Friend was a step behind. I think this offseason is going to be huge for him for letting him getting back to the level that he was at before he was hurt.
Yeah, he certainly wasn't the same. You got to feel for him a little bit because he gets injured, and if he doesn't get injured, maybe we're not talking about him coming back this season. Maybe who knows how the end of the season plays out for him and what LA does and what the Ontario Reign do, and if he ends up winding up there. But he definitely did seem a little bit slower when he got it back figured out. He was really good in the postseason, but it took took about a round and a half, I thought.
Guys, Cole Cameron, somebody who came to this Owen Sound attack team this year, and I thought that you saw throughout the season some shades of what he could do, and expectations certainly could be a little bit higher for him this year.
Yeah, and I think here's a player that fit into the style of play, the attack play, really figured out the game plan and was able to excel in it when he was given the opportunity. Not all the time are you going to get many minutes when you're a first-year defenseman, especially on a team that has some veteran D-man ahead of you that can log a ton of minutes, but I thought Cole did the best of taking advantage of his opportunities when he had them, and I see him fitting in exceptionally next year because of his hockey IQ. I think he's got it right up there.
Yeah, and you think about it, he's going to still be a 4 or 5 guy on this team next year. To have a returning guy who's as good as Cole Cameron in your 4 or 5 spot, I think Owen Sound attack fans should be pretty happy about their 6 defensemen heading into next season.
Only about 8 minutes left, guys. Wanted to quickly touch on the last 2 defensive pieces. Trenton Bork, who somebody I think is a heart and soul member of Owen Sound. When you think of the Owen Sound attack, you can think of Trenton Bork, just like you thought of Justin Brack when he was here.
Yeah, Trent Bork leaves it all on the ice every night, and here's a player that, again, coming into this season, there were question marks about where did he fit in on this team, and I think he erased those right away because his game, right until the final buzzer of this season, just continued to develop and continue to grow, and that's what you like to see, that he didn't really get to a level and just sort of stay at that one and flatline. He kept rising, and I'm a big fan of Trent Bork. I think he's going to get some look from some NHL teams. He might not get drafted. He might get drafted. Who knows? But he'll certainly get an invite to a rookie camp because here's a defenseman with a lot of tools, and I'm excited to see what next season holds for him.
And as far as unsung heroes go, this guy might lead the pack for the Owen Sound attack. The one guy you're never going to hear get talked about maybe in the streets or at the mall, but the one guy who night in, night out, you didn't really ever think he had a bad game. He plays really simple. You don't notice him. He had a good game, and we didn't talk about him a lot this season, so he had a lot of good games.
And Nick King as well, guys. Somebody who slowly transitioning onto this Owen Sound attack team, but very well, you could, like Cole Cameron, kind of saw shades of what he could do, Mark.
Yeah, with Nick King, I think that you weren't afraid when he was out on the ice, and that's something that sometimes with first-year defensemen, that there's that little bit of nerves, but when he's on the ice, you're confident that he knows what he's doing. He came here late after signing with the team partway through the season and took full advantage of his opportunity. Again, another player you're excited to see what he can do next season.
And it's going to be competitive on the back end going into training camp. You got Luke Beamish, too, who started the season here, and he's going to be doing his best to push Nick King for one of those final defenseman spots.
Quickly, only a couple minutes, guys. We want to talk about goaltenders and Ryan McGill as well. Let's talk about Michael McNiven. Just saying the name Michael McNiven, I think, can sum it up.
Yeah, he did everything that you hoped he could do and more this season. Fantastic performances night in and night out. Wins OHL Goalie of the Year and has put himself in a great position to exceed at the next level. And that's what you want to see for the young man. And again, here's a player that you don't always say about netminders, plays with a lot of passion.
He's feisty. He's been through a lot. He's battled all of it, and he's came out the other side just as good as he went into it, so can't say enough good things about Michael.
Emmanuel Vela, somebody who could possibly step up into that role next season. We don't know as of yet, but maybe a little bit of question marks around what he could possibly do. Haven't seen him in a full 50 or 60 game perspective. We'll have to see how he does next season, but could be the answer that the attacker looking for in net if McNiven does move on. But guys, let's jump into quickly Ryan McGill, winning Coach of the Year. I think he did a great job coaching this team this year.
Not a great job is probably an understatement. Did an exceptional job, and you look at just the style of play this team plays. They're probably the most exciting team to watch in the league, and also probably the smoothest team to watch. The way they move the puck, it's tremendous, and he really gets the most out of his players, and that's what you want from a coach. And franchise record year. Full marks to Ryan McGill, because in his second year here, he kind of got that first year and took a team that wasn't expected to do much into the playoffs, beat the team that went on to win it all a couple times, gave them a great series, and right then and there you knew, gee, I think he's got something here, and this year lived up to it.
The job he's done perfecting his system, and the job communication-wise him and Dale have done to bring in players that fit into his system, it's been pretty special to watch, and you're looking forward to the next group of guys coming in because they've been identified as guys who are going to fit this system.
Now, guys, here's an interesting thing. does Coach Ryan McGill come back next year? A lot of people probably thinking, yeah, he very well may, but the way that he's coached his team, you can't help but think that he might get some offers from some pro contracts.
Certainly could. Yeah, that's definitely a possibility. That's a possibility with any coach in junior hockey that has a lot of success. So we'll have to wait and see. Obviously, we're not going to be ones to speculate, but at the same time, there's full reasons for him to be getting attention because of the job he's done here in Owen Sound. And if you're an Owen Sound Attack fan, you're excited about what he could do with the team next year.
So we only have a couple minutes left. We still have to do the draw, but let's show up the expectational rosters for this Owen Sound Attack Club for the 2017-2018 season.
Yeah, well, we're going to take a look at it right here. And a lot of the times when you're trying to guess, you got a lot of holes to fill, and you're looking at players that the team has drafted in recent priority selections. That's not really the case with the Owen Sound Attack because there's a lot of players that are going to be back. There's a look at what it could be. You see the top line all intact. You see that second line, probably no surprise right there as the players that are on there.
Okay.
And then you've got the third line. I put an import player right there. I would like to see the Attack try and get an import forward because I think if you can get an import that maybe is of high talent that could slide into the top 6, then that helps the bottom 6 because there's a lot of young players down there. You see Nick Price's name twice. I got to figure out who's supposed to be in there. Probably Zach Roberts. I think he should be in there. But that's the kind of what we're talking about. There's lots of forwards there. There's lots of options. It's nice to have options. There's no doubt about that. It's nice not going into camp going, I hope somebody wows us and steps up because it's nice to know what you could have. That's a look at the forwards. We'll move on to the defense, John.
And it's pretty much the exact 6 guys we talked about. 6 guys who were here. Luke Beamish was here at the beginning of the year, and a guy who's going to push for a spot. The goaltending is a bigger question. Vela, Daniels, McNiven, we don't know. There's some questions to be answered, but we got lots of time before the season kicks off.
So we'll definitely have to see how that rolls. But now it's time for the moment of truth. I'm going to reach into this little bucket here, and I'm going to pick out a name. And the winner is going to be Mark Jones. Mark, congratulations. You win this autographed Owen Sound Attack jersey behind us, and we've got all your contact info and whatnot. You'll be able to get that, but thank you very much for calling in, Mark, and it just shows you that if you call in the last 7, 8, 9, 10 minutes of the show, you can very well get a chance to win. So thank you very much for calling in, and thank everyone for calling in, not only in this show, but throughout the season. It's been a fun ride.
It's certainly been a fun ride. I'm really looking forward to next season. It was a long ride. There's no doubt about that. I barely remember the preseason back in September, but that's the kind of seasons that it's fun to cover a team that has success, and it's fun to cover a team that, again, the fan base is passionate about. So we definitely give a shout out to everybody who watches night in and night out, catches all the games, and stops us in the rink just to talk about the team because it's fun to be able to cover a team that people care so much about.
It's funny, the seasons you barely remember the preseason is the seasons that you're mostly looking forward to the next preseason, and that's how I'm looking at this.
Yeah, and it's been a real privilege, especially for myself, being able to come up here. I moved up here from the Niagara region, and to be able to fit in with an organization like this, be able to broadcast for the Owen Sound Attack, certainly so special. And I'm going to take a little bit of dig at Niagara when I say this. I think the Owen Sound Attack have the best fans in the OHL, even better than the Niagara Ice Dogs.
Oh, so, better than everyone else.
Absolutely. So we want to thank you very much once again. We will be back next season for the 2017-2018 Owen Sound Attack. Thank you very much for joining us on Attack Wrap.